Morning, Rafael. So we're at the two dots on Mem Amid Bays. I'd say it's about 14 lines up. Rabbi Yossi Yomer. Last word on the line. Mem Amid Bays. So in the Mishnah, we had said that there are Chakiris, or Drishas, and Bedikas. And these are the Chakiris. The Chakiris are the things that the 7 questions that the Tanna Kama says you have to ask to make sure that it's an Eidish Yachal Hazimon, an Eidish that can be contradicted. And then there's the other questions that are asked on top of that, the additional questions. Rabbi Yossi disagreed. He said there's not 7 questions. You don't have to ask which of the 7 years in the Shemitah cycle, which Shemitah cycle it was, and then which of the years in the Shemitah cycle, and then which month. He said you only have to ask 3 questions, which was essentially which day of the week, what hour, and where did it happen. Tanya, Amalhem Rabbi Yossi l'chacham, l'dvareicha misha bava amar emesh hargoi. Rabbi Yossi asked on the chacham who said you have to ask 7 questions. Someone who came and said, he was killed recently. I think emesh means, I think it literally means yesterday, but it means it just happened. What do you have to ask all these questions? He's just said it recently happened. So it's clearly, if he said it had just happened a day or 2 ago, so it wasn't 10 years ago. We know it was in this Shemitah cycle, and we know it was this year, and we know it was this month. So all these things are not necessary. So they said back to Rabbi Yossi, said, even you, Rabbi Yossi, you said you have to ask 3 questions. You have to ask what day it was, which day of the week, and what hour, and where did it happen. But if you said it just happened, then all these things are not necessary. I mean, not all of them, but you don't have to say Be'ez Yaim and Be'ez Shah. You just said it just happened now. Why do we ask unnecessary questions, even when it comes to the questions that Sheyachal Haziman? Because we hold like Rabbi Elazar, Shimon Elazar, who had said before that we ask additional questions in order that the person, we used to walk them around, we used to walk the Eidim from one room to the other, and similarly we ask questions that are not strictly necessary in order to get the Eidim nervous. So you have to ask your 3 questions in order to intimidate the witnesses. So we say it's 7. Rabbi Yossi would disagree. He says, to say that it just happened recently, happened yesterday or the day before, that is a very common thing for a person to say. Akshav hargo, that it just happened now, and they immediately go to Bez and he said it happened immediately. So that's not so typical. So there's no reason to say as a rule that you say 3 Eidim. You ask 3 questions of the Eidim.
Is this why Rabbi Yossi says, because he never really went through why he only holds you need 3 questions?
Yeah, he held that you keep it to the bare minimum. Like I said, just from the way this Gemara is going, there's going to be other questions. We're going to say that we're going to ask that it's a deraisa and all of them should be the same, and then we go back to the reasons. I believe that the psukim are it seems to me that the psukim must be an asmachta, and these questions are just the questions are based on the necessity of what's necessary. So Rabbi Yossi says that it doesn't go based on the psukim; it goes based on what you need. He doesn't hold the psukim, but these 3 are the minimum that you need. Right. Okay. So Rabbi Yossi is disagreeing with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. He doesn't hold you. So the Rabbi Yossi holds that you, but derech klal you always need 3. So he doesn't hold of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. He doesn't. You ask that why do you need all 3? He's saying because that's what's typically needed.
I mean, Rabbi Yossi really holds it. It's more of a practical situation.
It's purely dependent on the situation.
Usually people testify about a murder that just occurred in the recent past. If they would testify about it,
then the only question would be, where did it happen? If he says it happened 6 months ago, or he says it happened a long time ago, then you'd ask him all 7 questions theoretically. And the Chum say, hold on, Shimon Lazar, they say you always do 7 in order to hear. You ask the Eidim, do you recognize who was the victim? Because you're asking him if he recognized the victim to know if he was a Yid, that he should be Mechayev Misa. His recent boy, we asked, did you give him Asra? Kibel love Asra? Did he say, I heard your Asra? Hitter Atzme Lemisa. In the Mishnah, we had said Hitter Atzme Lemisa means that the defendant said that he knows that he's going to get, for example, if he's about to kill someone, he knows I'm going to get Saif, I'm going to get my head cut off if I kill him. He has to literally say which misa, which method of execution is the einish for this, for the oven, for what he's doing. Hey, you also ask the Eidim, did he kill him with the Torch Kedei Dibur of being Makabal the Hasra and saying that he understood what Misa he's going to get? Because if it was more than that, he could say, the defendant could say, I already forgot what you said. However, when he's Avodah Zarah, you're asking Besmi Avad, Lepa'ar Avad, Lemarkulius Avad, Ubameh Avad, which did we Avad to Baal Pa'ar or to the Markulis? Ubameh Avad, Bezivuach, did he shecht something? Bekitor, did he burn something? Benisach, did he pour something out? Beshtachavad, did he bow to it? These are all the questions when they get to what are these things that you're going to be chayiv misa for.
Now I get why the Gemara was talking, the famous Gemara about a bezin that kills once in 70 years is, this murderer would have to be a real idiot. That's
the raw part is that he has to say, I know if I do this, he's talking to the Eidim, saying, I know if I do this, I'm going to get misa and I'm going to get this exact misa, and then b'tech kedei dibur committed. And how many murderers in the middle of doing their thing stop to respond to the Eidim? Yeah. And basically, once you get to this point, you could say the murderer is probably he's going to get off for reasons of insanity. Ella, Amarula, Minan Lasram and Atira. Where does Hasraf? Where do we get that you need to have Hasraf? Shenema, we're going to give 4 reasons. The Torah says if someone will be born, his sister, or who's from his father or from his mother, and he will see her ever. So what does it mean, V'roa b'tiras ervasa? It doesn't mean literally to see. It has to be, so we darshan from that, he has to see the reason. It means he has to get hasra, he has to be warned. He has to see the reason why he's going to get the einish. And now clearly, the einish for being born achaisa is karas. It's not misa bidei adam. So to say that you need a hasra for karas doesn't make any sense. The Rosh Hashanah gives out karas. He doesn't need hasra. He knows whether it's shaygu or memezit. So we say it must be applicable legabe malchus that if someone is not eligible for karas or he's not getting karas, whatever, someone who does something that the einish is karas, there's also a chiyuv malchus. So the malchus would only come with asra. So that's what we see asra. This is talking about if someone's planning to kill his friend. Ba'arama, it's kiyazid. So I'm sorry, that's the end of the pasuk. Ba'arma, when he's trying to do it with deceiving him, he's gonna sneak up on him and kill him. Shehisrubai. So yazid. The Torah says kiyazid ishal re'eu lahargoi ba'aram. When a person is killing his friend with deceit. So the Gemara says shehisrubai v'adayin hu mezid. It's a lashon of a hoiva, that it's actually happening. It doesn't say when a person killed his friend, but it says when a person is killing his friend, ba'arama. So it has to be ba'adayin who makes it. He's still in the middle of planning. So that's how do you, the only way you know that is with hasra. The Rebbe Shmuel Tana, hamoitziam oisay mikoishish eitzim. When you found them being mikoishish eitzim. Shehishaboy ba'adayin who mikoishish. Again, it uses a present lashon haiva, as they're doing it, not that they found them after they found them, but rather they found them as they were doing it. So that must be that they were mekaishish, that they were, and they were master them at the time. The Bei Rebbe Tana al Dovasher Ina, the Torah says he's going to get punished on that which he was ma'anis a woman. He's going to get misa. Aliske Diba. It's talking about Asher Ina. Ina is a lashon of answer. So it has to be that's mashma, that there's a discussion. I'm sorry, the davar. Al davar, we say it means diba, that there's some discussion going on. And what's the discussion? That he was giving him asra. So we have 4 reasons for asra. The first one is legabi malchus. The second one is legabi hariga, which the onus is sayif. The third one is mekaish eitzim, which is Shabbos, mechal Shabbos, which is skila. And the fourth one is also, which is being ma'anis, which is also skila. Utricha, we need all 4. I would say that which you need hasra is only on chayve malchus. The chayve mises, which is more serious, right? The person did a worse einish. On that, he doesn't need hasra. He gets chayve even without hasra. They kill. That's talking about where someone's a murderer. A murderer gets beheaded. So that's more kal than skila. So only for sayif do you get hasra, but skila you don't. Avol skila the chamura emaloi tzricha. But ta'ate de b'niskalin lamali. Then why do we have to have 2 different psukim by skila? The Rav Shimon lasu yinisrafin. According to Rav Shimon, who holds sreifa is more chomer than skila. So even though we have malchus and we have sayif and we have skila, we still don't have sreifa. So therefore, we just say 2 by skila. We say like in the main union to include sreifa. The Rabbanan milsi yasam kal v'chayim torach v'kasav l'kra. According to Rabbanan that nisrafin is more kal, we still wrote an extra skila to tell you nisrafin because there's a rule that even something that we can learn out b'chal v'chayim, we still say. The lichler rachman and miskal and v'leisi hanaf v'ligrinei. Why do we have to say all of them? The Gemara in the end says you have to come on according to everyone. They say most of the cost of the Isa Bakal V'chayma you have to write. We said he has to acknowledge what kind of misa he's getting. Where does this come from? You must hames. The Torah says you must hames. He has to say the mace what misa he's getting. If someone says edus that this engaged woman, this woman who was mukadeshes, was born someone while she was mukadeshes, and then they're found to be edim zaymim, they don't get killed. Why not? The edim zaymim can say, our intention with saying this edus, we did not intend to get her killed. All we intended to do was to answer her on her husband. When if a woman is mizana while she's married, first of all, she gets killed, she gets executed. In addition, if for some reason the execution doesn't go through, she's going to be aser al baila. So these Adam can say, we're not mezidim. We never intended. All we thought we were going to be doing by telling her that she's going to get killed. That we're telling her that she's not allowed to do it is that she's going to be asur al baila. How could they claim that they only intended for her to get asur al baila asruba? In order for her to get killed, they had to have given asura. So they said not just that you're going to be asur al baila, but you're also going to be killed. So this just the same way the hasra applied to them, applied to her, that her, and when I say them, I mean her and the person she was mizana with, that they're going to get killed. It also is a hasra for the Edom Zaymim themselves. So Gemara Doli Asraba. We're talking about you didn't give Asra. In fact, Gemara Doli Asraba Heichi Miktala. How could the woman have gotten? How could we kill her? How could she get misa with what they say? We're saying Edim Naramasa Shozma Ein Erogin. It's mashma that only they don't get misa, but even though they were trying to give her misa, but if there was no Asra, obviously they wouldn't get misa. It's not Kachazama. So how is the woman getting killed? Isha Chavera. We're talking about a woman who's a Chavera. She's very learned. So Valiba de Rabbi Yosef Chanina, the Tanya Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. The Tanya Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Aimer Chavei Netzarach Hasra. Someone who's learned doesn't. Someone who's Talmud Chacham doesn't need Hasra. The whole purpose of Asra is that the person shouldn't say, I didn't know this is Asr. But if someone's a Talmud Chacham, he clearly knows the halacha, he doesn't need Hasra. Now, even though we just said all these psukim of where the source of Asra is, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda doesn't hold these psukim, they hold their only an asmachta. In fact, even the inulay miktali, heichi miktala. The Gemara says, so what are you saying? So you're saying she gets killed because she's an Eishes Chaver. She's a Isha Chavera. So she doesn't need Hasra. So how are these Eidim Zaymim going to get killed? They only get killed if the Eidim are going to say, but we thought that she's only going to be Asa Labaila. But if they're Eidim She'iyatu Yachal Azimam, if they can't get Misa, she also can't get Misa. Haval Eidim She'iyatu Yachal Azimah. V'chol Eidim She'iyatu Yachal Azimah Lo Yishma Eidis. So she also shouldn't get killed. So Gemara Hachanami Kamar. Mitoch she'ein erogan sheichol lem l'asher ba'ilad banu afi ein eregas. Davleid shi'ati yachalazim ein chanami. Our understanding from the beginning was wrong. Really, we're not talking about it's not an Eishes Chaver. We're saying that since the Eidim always have this out, that they could say that we thought that it was only to make her be Asa L'Baila. So even though she's an Eishes Chaver, that would really be enough that she should get killed, since the Eida Shiati Al Chazim, she also is not going to be able to be Huzum. Zaknamara. Elab Isha Chaver, the Kaimel and the Mikdala, Alib the Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, Hechi Mishkachasla. How are you ever going to find that a woman who is an Eishes Chaver, that she is, how's she ever going to get killed? Now, I would have said a very simple answer. I don't know why you can't talk about whether Eidim are Chaverim. So they also know without the Hasra. I'm not sure why the Gemara didn't answer that. So the Gemara, yeah. But in any case, the Gemara is asking, how are you ever going to find a case? But basically, Yehuda is saying this din, that an Isha that's a Chavera does not require Hasra, but the Eidim are always going to be Eidim Shiati Yachal Azim, if they don't give the Hasra. So why do we say Isha Chavera Shezinsa is Chai without Hasra?
You don't give Hasra to the Eidim. So
no, I'm saying,
right.
We just said that the Eidim need the Hasra, because otherwise they're going to be able to say, La Yisrael Baila Banu. It's only if they said Hasra, you're going to get killed, and she was acknowledged it. So then they can't afterwards say that we only thought all we were doing was Asr and Baila. Once they gave the Hasra, it functions as Hasra for them, for their Hazava. It takes away that argument. But I don't understand why it can't be with their Chaverim, that L'chayr should, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm not really sure why that's not an answer. So Ella, we're talking about an Isha that she was Mizana, and Eidim came, and she was the Isha Chavera, and they didn't give Hasra, so she already became Asa L'Baila, and then she was Mizana again. So on the second time she's Mizana, there's no more Asra and Al-Baila. They can't say I was only coming to Asa L'Baila. So I guess it's, yeah, they know already she's Asa L'Baila. So if they're coming to say the Eidus, it must be that their intention was to be Mechayev HaMisa. Maybe when an Isha is Mizana, not only does she become Asa to her husband, she also becomes Asa to the person she was born. She can never marry him, even if she gets divorced from her husband. So maybe it's coming to Aser al-Bayal Sheni on the second person she was Bayal on. So the Marsha Zinsa mi Bayal Rishon. We're talking about where she was born the second time for the second time with the same Bayal. So in that case, you'll have so then they won't have the Eitzah of saying that we're coming to Aser Halabayla. So therefore, they become an Eidah Sheyachal Azima. Inami Shezinsa Mikroiva. She was Mizana with on her Kroivim, that's Aser anyway, so they can't come and say, the Eidim can't say we're coming to Aser Halabai to the Bayala, because she was also to the Bayal anyway, because it was a car. What does this have to do with the fact that she was just a Mekudeshes? Even if she was in a Suud, L'chayr would be the exact same discussion. She would be Asa L'bayla or L'bayla. The Gemara wants to say, even this, that she's only a Mekudeshes. So she's not, her husband is not yet, she's not Mutter L'bayla yet, she's not an Asua. Even so, they could make a claim that we were only coming L'Isra Abayla, our intention was not to get her killed. Amr of Chizda. Echad Ayma B'Sayef Hargu, Echad Ayma Ba'aririn Hargu. Ein Zen Nachem. We learned from the Pasuk, Nachem Hoya Davar, that they have to, that the answers of the Chuvas, the second group of questions, have to match up. So we say if one aide said that he killed her with a sword, and the other one said I killed her with a knife, that's not nachem, that's a discrepancy, and the two aides are contradict each other, and therefore it's not going to be a kosher aides. They said that one said he was wearing white clothing, the other one said black clothing. That's not a contradiction that puzzles it. That's an irrelevant point that doesn't puzzle the aides. We don't care about if they contradict each other. In fact, the it has to be, they have to be in agreement. If one said with a sword and one said with a knife, even if it's one said he's wearing white clothing, one said black clothing, that's a contradiction, and that will passel the edis. That's not like what we just said. We said a difference on something that's not relevant, that's a totally irrelevant point, is not going to passel the edis. When that second brisa that says that the color of the clothing will passel, a contradiction in that will passel the edis, we're talking about the murder weapon, where he strangled her, he strangled the other person with a piece of cloth, and they disagree about what the color of that cloth was. The Hainu Saif Arirun, that's the same thing as different types of murder weapons, as a sword and a knife. Toshma, Echad Aymer Sandal of Shurin, Echad Aymer Sandal of Levenim, Ein Zen Nachin. That's also going to be a contradiction, but L'chayr, that's not a murder weapon. No, Hasanami Kuncha Avid by Besandla. It's talking about we kicked him, Baharga, and he killed him with a kick, and they're arguing about what the shoe was that killed him. Toshma Maisu Bodik Ben Zakai Ba'uksei Ta'ena. What about our Mishnah that there was a Maisa with Ben Zakai that he said about the thickness, about the uketz, the stem of a ta'ena of a fig? That's l'chayre also not relevant. We're talking about where he cut a ta'ena off on Shabbos, and then we're talking about what the stem of the ta'ena that he cut off was. So that's the thing that's very relevant to the Misa. That's not an extraneous discussion. That's part of the actual thing that's causing them to be killed. We have a brisa that says he killed someone underneath a ta'ena, and that he could passel based on what that ta'ena was. Again, that seems to be an extraneous fact. It doesn't mean tachas ta'ena. It means that he speared him with the actual ta'ena. We're talking about, we said tachas ta'ena hargu, so we see it's talking about where he was killed, not Shabbos. So you can't say that he cut the ta'ena. So the Gemara says in l'chayra the ta'ena has nothing to do with the misa. So the Gemara says no, we're talking about sheshafta b'yichad shel ta'ena. He used the stem of a ta'ena to stab him, and the question is how thick was that ta'ena? Toshman amalahan ta'ena zu uktzeh daken uktzeh gasen. This ta'ena, the stems are thick or thin, Te'ena shchayrim, te'ena levein, the figs themselves are black or white. So you can't say you stab someone with a fig. It's one thing to say you stabbed with the stem of a fig, but the fig itself is not a murder weapon. Allah Rav Yosef, mi ben Zak, Amar Rav Yosef, mi ben Zakai, loisiv inish, loisiv, you're asking from ben Zakai, Shani ben Zakai, the Vedikas Chakiris Mashvilei. The Gemara says, no, you're asking from ben Zakai that he said this din that if there's a disagreement, if there's a contradiction, Lagabi to Einim, the Eidim are going to be puzzle. He has a very radical shita. He has an extreme shita, ben Zakai, that he holds any type of disagreement is enough to send them free. Like we said, any bezdin that kills once in 70 years, ben Zakai said you could keep asking questions, and as soon as they come, once was it a 100-watt bulb in the light fixture or an 80-watt bulb? If they disagree even on that, no matter how irrelevant it is, that's enough to let them free. Mam ben Zakai. So who's this ben Zakai? Ilam Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai. This is the famous Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, and he was the one who said that he was sitting. That we said the Maisa that he passled someone. He passled the Edis based on the discrepancy about a Ta'ina. Mi have a Sanhedrin. Did he ever participate in a Sanhedrin that was done dini nefashos? Vatanya. Kol shnois of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai meiva esher. He lived for 120 years. Arboyim shana osek b'pamacha. His first 40 years he was working. Men shana lama. Then from 40 to 80 he learned. Arboyim shana limit. And for the last 40 years of his life he was a malamed. That's when he became he was oil l'gdula. The Tanya. Arboyim shana kaidim churban abayis. Gol Sanhedrin v'yashalo b'chanus. The Sanhedrin left the Har HaBayis and they were no longer sitting in the Har HaBayis. When they left the Beis HaMikdash, they left their place in the Lishka, they no longer were down Dine Knossos. It's like the Mar Dine Knossos, Sakadaitach. The Dine Knossos stayed forever. There's no stopping of Dine Knossos because the Sanhedrin was not in the Lishka. What it means is they didn't impose Dine Nefashos from the 40 years before the Churban. Utnan Mishachar Beis HaMikdash, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai. From the time of the Beis HaMikdash was Charav, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai was Masakin. So Vaisas Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai was teaching. He was already part of the Sanhedrin after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, and we said that the Sanhedrin stopped being done Dini Nefashos 40 years before the Churban. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai only was a Malamed. He only was Oil L'Gdula for the last 40 years of his life. So how could you say that this Ben Zakai is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, that he killed someone, that he potted someone from Dinei Nefashos based on an edus that was contradictory about figs, but he never had the opportunity to be done Dinei Nefashos. Ela Ben Zakai de Alma. So this Ben Zakai must be a different person. Charlie Ben Zakai. It's not respectful to call Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai Ben Zakai. You call him by his full name. But the Gemara says, but there's a problem, that there's a brisa that says clearly that it wasn't just Ben Zakai, it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai who had this ma'isa. Ella, Talmud Yosef nei Rabbi Hava. Really, it wasn't in the last 40 years of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, it was in the middle 40 years when he was a Talmud. But like we said before, they had the Talmidim sitting there, and if they said a svara, they would accept them. The Kabo b'shmai, and afterwards, this kasha that he asked became his kasha. It was accredited to him. He have a lomed ben Zakai hava, karalik a Talmud Yeshem Pnei Rabbi. So that which he said when he was a Talmud, they said b'shem ben Zakai. He have a limed, have a karalik Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai. And then when he was someone teaching, then he was called Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai. Since he was called different things at different times in his career, the Mishnah called him Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, and the Brisa called him Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, and our Mishnah called him ben Zakai, but it's all the same person. So tomorrow, Maisu Badak. We said, so Ma ben Chakiris. We said, what's the difference between Chakiris and Shuvas? The Chakiris are the 7. We said if there'll be a contradiction, or they'll say Eina Yedeya on the first 7 questions, or the 3 questions of Rabbi Yossi, that will pass all the Edis. But on the second group, if they say Eina Yedeya to the non-essential questions, that doesn't passel the Eidus. And the Mishnah said, even if both of them say, I don't know, on the second group of questions, it's not going to passel. What does it mean when the Mishnah says, even if both of them say they don't know? Pshita. Once one said, I don't know, the second person saying anything, whether he says it or not, even if he would say something, there's no one to contradict him. So clearly, how could that passel the Eids if he says, I don't know, even if he said it, there's no one to contradict him? It's going on the first 7 questions. Even if you have 3 Eidim, and 2 of the Eidim said the time and the place, and then the third Eid said, I'm not sure about any of those original 7 questions, that's going to passel the whole Eidus. Rabbi Kiva says all 3 Eidim have to be Eidim Sheyachal Haziman. Even though you don't need the third Eid, but once 3 Eidim are coming, and one of them is the Eid Sheyachal Haziman, that will passel the whole Eidus. Amar Rava v'Eidusan Kayemes Ktani. Gemara says, but what do you mean? The Mishnah said if you have 2 Eidim Eidusan Kayemes. It's not saying that if you have 2 Eidim, if 2 say Eini Yadeya, but if a third one says Eini, if 2 say Yoidim and one says Eini Yadeya, that it's possible. It's the other way around. It said it's Eidusan Kayemes if they say Eini Yadeya. Elam Rava Hagigam Afilu b'Chakirish Shnayim Oimrim Yadan v'Echad Oimrim Eini Yadeya Eidusan Kayemes command the like Rabbi Kiva. It means it's going on this machlokes, but passing not like Rabbi Kiva, that as long as you have, even if you have 2 saying any Yadeya, Eidusan Kayemes. Rav Kahana Rav Safra Tanu, Sanhedrin by Rava, they were learning in the Sanhedrin by Rava, they're learning the Sugi of Sanhedrin. Pagaba Rabbi Bachama. They met Rabbi Bachama, Amalhu Mayam Risa Baba Sanhedrin by Rava. What were you learning there? Amaleo Mayam Rinam Baba Sanhedrin grade also. They said, what was your question when you were learning by yourself? You asked them what we said by the Sanhedrin when we were learning Sanhedrin by Rava. What were you learning? What was your questions about Sanhedrin that you learned on your own? My kasha, what was bothering you? What he asked about this din in the Mishnah that we say even if 2 of the Eidim say legabi bedikas, maybe the non-essential questions they don't know the edusin is kayemes. They're both being learned from the pasuk. The Torah says that you're supposed to do. You have to ask questions of the Eidim. They're both midaraisa required. So why do they have different dinim? He said the nafkamina that it states in the Mishnah that has to be Eidish Yachal Azima. Amalahu Yahaki Amrisaba Tuva. Amrisaba Tuva. He said, you're saying a very big Ginyan. This is very interesting the way you're cutting, you're describing it. It's a great Indian. Amrisaba Amrile. They answered him back. The only reason we were able to say this is because you didn't argue with us. You would have started arguing with us, we might not have been able to back it up. We would have been scared to say this didn't. But since you were being nice, we were able to say it. This is what I was mentioning before, that it's hard to understand what the status of this din of Drishas and Chakiris are. I'm sorry, I said the Legabe Hasra before, but it's really about this din of Drishas and Chakiris. We're saying on the one hand, we're saying it's coming from Psukim, but then we're saying that it's based on the Svara of Shiachal Azim, and there's nothing inherent about Drishas, and we didn't say anything that Chakiris means B'dafka, those questions that have to do with Hazama. So I think the point is that all of these questions come from the pasuk that you're supposed to ask questions, and then we the Chachamim divided up the questions like there's no distinction between Drishas and Chakiris. The Chachamim were misaken what the question should be. Those that are not necessary, that are not Shiachal Hazimam, are not there. If you get them wrong, those are not the ones that the Torah required, or else obviously everything is an asmachta be'alma. Okay, we'll stop over here. Shkayach.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Tomorrow, I expect to be in shul tomorrow. Okay. I'll see you there.
Shkayach.
Take care.